Welcome to Leading Your Culture with Bill Nye. This episode is brought to you by Multifamily Media Network, delivering the latest news, ideas, and inspiration across the multifamily sector. Now let's go ahead and jump into the next episode of Leading Your Culture with Bill Nye. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Leading Your Culture with Bill Nye. I'm your host, Bill Nye. So over the last month, I spent 11 days total teaching NAA designation classes. 5 days of teaching CAPS and 6 days of teaching CAM. And something really stood out to me after those 11 days in front of industry professionals, and that is that they're tired. But they're not tired for the reasons you think they're tired. They're tired because they are spending way too much time trying to deal with the emotions of the people that they lead, trying to manage your emotions and their feelings. There was a lot of organic conversations that took place during those 11 days about, working with people and leading people who are always calling in, showing up late, find everything to be, too challenging, too difficult. My feelings are hurt. I'm upset. And it really caused me to start thinking about, where we are today as leaders. And I think there's a lot of attacks, at least from my perspective, there's a lot of attacks on leaders that, leaders need to stop doing ABC and start doing more of XYZ. And I think it's appropriate to communicate those things from time to time, but there seems to be an abundance of that, almost as if to say that, the workforce is unhappy exclusively because it's the leader's fault. And clearly that's just not true. There are a lot of great leaders out there, people that you don't know, you've never heard of. They're just going about doing their business, trying to help develop people and coach and guide their team and help them to grow and be more successful. And I want to share 3 things with you that leaders should never apologize for. And I hope you'll take these to heart. Number 1, a leader should never apologize for the work being difficult. The work is the work. And if it's difficult, that's the nature of the work. And a leader should never apologize that the work is difficult. In fact, the work should be difficult. You should want to hire people who are looking to be challenged, looking for work that will be difficult, whether it's a physical challenge or whether it's a mental challenge. I personally find that the more challenging the work, the more rewarding the work is. And, I reflect back a lot on my childhood and my life. And I think that's what you do when you get to be where I am in life. You spend a lot of time reflecting. But I remember, my first job after high school, I worked for a logging company, and it was incredibly difficult work. It was, physically just very difficult. And I remember, one particular day we had to shut down because of a thunderstorm that was in our area. And so we all went to the little makeshift shack that housed the diesel engine that ran the sawmill. And we're sitting around, and all these old loggers are telling their stories. I'm the young guy in the room. And so all these older, the 30s and 40s, I was, 18, 19 years old. So anyone who was over 25 was older in my world. But I'm sitting there, and these more experienced older guys are telling their war stories about, their logging careers. And as they're talking and laughing and bantering back and forth, I'm looking around the room, I'm enjoying the moment. And I noticed that I was the only one, and it's a true statement. There were 9 of us in that room. I was the only one who had all of his fingers and thumbs. Everybody in there was missing part of a finger, a whole finger, part of a thumb, an entire thumb. One guy was missing 3 fingers. And that was the nature of the job. It was a very, very dangerous job, but I loved it. I look back on that job, and of all the jobs I've had, and look, I love what I do now as a full-time motivational speaker and presenter, but I've never had a job I love more than that job. But I've never had a job that was harder physically. It was very difficult. And I found the physical aspect of that job to be very challenging. And it gave me an ability to kind of challenge myself and prove myself. And, I know now I couldn't do that job, not at this point in my life. But at 18, 19, 20, I did that job for 3 years. I found it to be very physically challenging. It helped certainly to put me kind of in a different place physically at that time of my life in terms of my physical strength and endurance. And it was good for me. And it was really good springboard for when I went off to basic training, just shy of my 21st birthday, because I'd been working in such a physically demanding job that whatever physical test they threw at me at that point, quite frankly, was not that challenging, because nothing was as physically challenging as the job I had as a logger. But now there's a caveat to this. If the job is more difficult because as a leader, I failed to communicate something or provide a resource, then I should apologize for failing to communicate or provide that resource. I think leaders need to always be vulnerable and honest and transparent, but don't apologize that the work is hard. And the people are having a tough time at work, people who work for you, because the job is too hard. Well, then they may not be a good fit for what you're trying to accomplish. Don't ever apologize that the work is hard. The work should be hard, and you should surround yourself with people who are actually energized and enjoy, the difficult part of the job. Look, turning an apartment can be a very difficult job. And there's nothing I could do as an executive to make that job easier, but there's a lot I could do to recognize your contributions and your effort. But don't ever apologize that the work is difficult. Number two, don't apologize for being demanding. Now, there's a difference between being demanding and then being unreasonable. But leaders should be demanding. You should demand excellence from your team. You should demand, great effort, high performance. You should demand responsibility, accountability, reliability, dependability. You should demand these things from your team. And don't apologize for being demanding. Again, there's a difference between being unreasonable and being demanding. And, again, I look back on the times where, some of the most rewarding moments of my life were times where, the situation demanded a lot from me. So your expectations should be demanding. You should first and foremost put high expectations on yourself. I occasionally would talk about the fact that I'm an Orange Theory member. My wife, Lindsay, and I both go to Orange Theory, and it's very demanding. And, kind of going back to it, things being difficult, it can at times be also very physically difficult. And so we're in class last week, and the class was called the chipper. And in the chipper, you chip away at a distance, you chip away at a number. And man, it is so demanding. And the coach said something I wish she'd have never said because of who I am. She said, don't expect to get all the way through all the floor exercises. I took the class this morning and it was very demanding. I didn't make it all the way to the end. And so you probably won't either. Don't ever say that to me, because I'm a knucklehead. I am the weirdo that will say, okay, challenge accepted. And so basically when the block began, you had to do 40 squats, tap squats, where you squat down to the bench, you tap your backside on the bench. So we had to do 40 tap squats, and then you went to the row and you rode 400 meters. Then you went to the floor and you did 35 leg lifts. So you're laying on a bench and you're bringing your legs up, straight up, 35 leg lifts. Go to the rower, row 350 meters. And then we did 30 squats with weights. You did a sumo squat, and then you came up with those weights and you worked on your upper body. You did 30 of those. And then you went to the rower and you rode 300 meters. And then we did 25 using the TRX bands. You face the wall, you lean way back, and you're doing like a pull up or a push up with the TRX bands, 25 of those, and then 250 meters. And then you did 20 fly presses with weights on the bench. And then you rode 200 meters. I'm missing something, 25 of something, 25, 20. Anyhow, we got 20 of something, and then 15, and then finally 10 movements. But after each one, you rowed a corresponding distance on the rowing machine. And so, I'm 64 years old. Nobody is expected to complete this. Challenge accepted. So I put an expectation on myself to do what? To get all the way through. So, man, I was like a lunatic, just getting all these done and then rowing as fast as I can. And I made it. I got all the way to the end. I did all the 4 exercises, did all the rowing, and then I asked the coach, now that I've done everything, there was like 3 minutes left in the block. I said, what do I do? And she just looked at me like, what in the world are you talking about? What do you mean you completed everything? And she just said, wow, you're really fast. So now you just do the 4 exercises. So I did the 40 squats again, didn't have to do the row. I started on the 35 leg lifts again, and time expired. And then from there, of course, we had to go to the treadmill and spend 23 minutes running on the treadmill. For the next 2 days, I could barely move. It was all I could do to stand up from the chair, sit down on a chair. I mean, I was in so much pain. But putting those expectations on myself, even though I paid for it the next couple of days, I'm not going to lie. Look, I was proud of myself for getting through the end, for being demanding of with my own personal expectations. So leaders should have demanding expectations. Again, there's a difference between being demanding and unreasonable. And I've worked for people who are unreasonable, but I think good leaders know where that line is, and they know how to draw that line between having demanding expectations and being unreasonable. I have no doubt that Michael Jordan, when he was at the heyday of his career, winning all those NBA championships, I have no doubt that Michael Jordan was not only demanding of himself, but he was demanding of his teammates. Give your best effort. Show up and give your best. Not most of the time, all of the time. Show up, give your best. And so don't apologize for being a leader that has demanding expectations that challenge your team, that push your team. So don't apologize for that. And then number 3, don't apologize for being defined by your standards. You're going to be defined by something, but you want to be defined by your standards. Have standards that are defining. I think about the great organizations out there that have really high standards for their product, for their service, and they don't apologize for that. They embrace, and they're proud of their standards and how they are defined by their standards. Listen, I said you're going to be defined by something. And if you don't hold yourself to the highest standards and hold your team to the highest standards, you know how your team and how your organization, your company, your business will be defined? You'll be defined by your lowest moments. You'll be defined by your mistakes. You don't want to be defined by your lowest moments. You don't want to be defined by your mistakes. You want to be defined by your standards. And so, Chick-fil-A will make a mistake every once in a while. The sandwich won't be right. I went to Chick-fil-A at the airport while traveling. And when I sat down to eat my dinner before boarding my flight, the sandwich was not what I ordered. But I don't define Chick-fil-A by that mistake. I define Chick-fil-A by their standards, and we all do. It's my pleasure, the politeness, the quick service, the accuracy, just the appearance of their team. And I love Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Listen, they are defined by the excellence of their steaks. And so have standards that define your company, your business, your team, and don't apologize for that. Hold yourselves to the highest standards possible. When I present, I always wear a suit, always. A necktie, button-down shirt. Oftentimes I'm wearing a shirt with French cuffs, so I'm wearing cufflinks. And I don't know anybody else who does that. I don't know another speaker out there who still wears a suit. Most of my friends who are professional speakers, presenters like myself, they're in a blazer, they're in a jacket, they're in a dress suit, a dress shirt, but they're not wearing a tie anymore. I still wear a tie. I still wear French cuffs because I wanted to be defined by my standards, because I will sometimes make a mistake. I will sometimes have a presentation that's a little off. It's happened to me. It happens to every presenter. And I don't want to be defined by those moments. I want to be defined by my standards. I want my standards to define me as a leader. And so while leaders are really struggling with team members who are, struggling with their resilience, with their mental toughness, with their emotions, it's tempting to give into that because we love our people. We care about them. I know when I led a team, these people were important to me. They meant something to me. I was deeply connected with them in every aspect of my life. And so it's easy to give into that and to feel this temptation to give into their emotions and their feelings. But you've heard me say this. If you've watched my podcast before, you've heard me say this. I care about your feelings, but I won't be held hostage by them. I'm not going to let your feelings cause me to lower my standards. I'm not going to let your feelings cause me to be less demanding. I'm not going to cause your feelings to cause me to try and make the work easier. So don't apologize for the fact that the work is difficult. Don't apologize that your expectations are demanding. And don't apologize that your standards are defining. These are three things that leaders need to hold on to and not compromise on, because the best people want to work for you if you do. The best qualified customers will want to do business with you because you do. The market will recognize that you are a market leader. I could go down a long list of people over the years who have worked for me and worked for me more than once. I think about people like Kelly Durham and Nicole Droz, who worked for me at 3 different companies. And I am confident that all 3 of them will tell you that I did nothing to try and make the work easier in terms of lowering the expectations, being less demanding, or not defining themselves by our standards. I always preach to the team to allow our standards to define who we are, have demanding expectations of yourself and one another, and love the challenging, difficult work. Love work that challenges you mentally. Love work that challenges you physically, because then you go home at the end of the day and you feel good about the fact that, man, this was hard, but I accomplished something. And so I hope any leaders out there who are watching this and listening to this, that this resonates with you, that this is a source of challenge. This is a source of, just helping you kind of work through some of the things that you're struggling with yourself. Because, as I mentioned, I get it. You care about the people that you lead, but you're not doing them any favors by lowering the expectations. If you're a parent and you lower the expectations for your kids, you're not doing your kids any favor. If you're holding your kids to a really low standard, you're not doing your kids any favor. You know this. If you're doing the homework for them because it's hard, you're not doing your kids any favor. So you wouldn't do this as a parent. You want your kids to excel academically. You want them to excel socially. You want them to excel in athletics and the clubs that they join. You want them to embrace, high standards. You want them to be held to demanding expectations, because you know that this will lead to a more successful life. So then why is it any different at work? It's not. It's no different. This is what's going to allow you to have a beautiful culture that attracts other people, the right kind of people. And so, don't apologize for those 3 things. Hope this is helpful. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Leading Your Culture with Bill Nye. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. And remember, this podcast is proudly brought to you by Multifamily Media Network, your trusted source for stories, trends, and insights in multifamily living. I appreciate you checking out my episode. I'm Bill Nye, and this was Leading Your Culture with Bill Nye.